Hello and welcome back to THU TV. My name is Nichols, and I'm going to be continuing my conversations that I'm having with attendees here regarding technology and creativity. And I have two very special guests here. I've got Eric and Greyson. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks for having us, man.
I've known you for many years. Obviously, you're over at Noman,
Yes.
right? And I've known you for many years as well through
That's
THU, and you're over at Lenovo, right?
Absolutely.
And you guys have been long-time sponsors, and obviously you're known as the White Knight.
Yeah, that thing just kind of took a life of its own. I
Right.
think, yeah, Scott said it once, and it was an honor to have him say it, but my team has found a wonderful way of making sure that they have fun at my expense with the White Knight
Yes,
now.
make you feel bad.
Which is good. Everyone needs that.
Yeah, I don't blame them. That's a good thing to do. Keep you humble. Keep you humble. But you guys obviously have been partners for a long time, and you are a technology company, right? You create great hardware. I know because I get to use it.
Thank you.
But where do you feel the connection is that you have between your tools and what you're offering the people for THU and that bridge that you make?
Yeah, I mean, one, I think it's important that from just a business perspective, and that's a huge part of what we're talking about here at THU this year. One of the messages was that, people, given the level of competition in all areas, given the explosion of social media and the way that companies interact with their markets, and that it's much more on a personal level, they should expect more than just a good product at a good price. They should be looking at companies who are truly invested in their futures and help open doors and take some of the investment that they're receiving in people buying the products and reinvest in the market. So I think that's part of it, is getting across to them, yes, there are the tools, but part of the tools is also just investments in the market and opening doors. Okay. As far as, from purely the technology standpoint, we get really excited about our products and the quality of the products and taking that hardware and enabling all the incredible software and the tools that are out there. And it can be hard to keep up with to do that. But when you see it in practice at a place like this, between collabs and the demos and sort of supplying the hardware that everybody's using, it's really exciting to see it really all come together. We always do it kind of in theory, but you got to see it. And so here's that chance for us to really see it. So that's part of the thrill for us.
And so, Eric, you're over at Noman, and you're I believe the CTO of Noman. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you know very, very well the struggles that you deal with in terms of sort of getting the right set of tools in front of people to use.
Yes.
And technology is fairly complicated these days, and there's a lot of things to consider. So, tell us some of the struggles you deal with as someone that helps that out.
Obviously at Noman, we're a little different than a traditional studio because just the amount of applications that we have to teach, right? So we have to make sure that the not just a few content creation applications are going to be working on a box, but we have to make sure they all work, that they all function, and not just at a standard level, at a high level. The students expect pro quality works, or they expect to create pro quality demo reels and stuff by the end of it. Not that they all will, but they want to come as close as they possibly can. And if the tools are not necessarily available for them, they get a little pissed off, obviously. And so you want to make sure that you're putting in front of them at least a tool that they can actually use where everything works. That's a struggle. I think we have 150 applications I think that we have to install. It's well over 100. I mean that's multiple versions of Maya, multiple versions of multiple tools. Because our instructors come in and they're like, well, I've only been using this version, and then they're not on the latest version typically in production, right? So we're finding that we have to put multiple, and it obviously creates a little bit of a struggle for us.
Sure.
The storage is another issue, and this just how the students use the products. They're hard on things.
Right.
It's like they just are. They're difficult on systems because they don't have the same I guess the knowledge to keep things efficient. So they will literally polybomb their own scenes by accident without knowing it, and they'll hit render and everything will come to a crawl. So
Right.
those are the main struggles. Is just dealing with the nuances of dealing with novices, and then obviously we're different than a normal studio that way.
Yeah. Do you think that the studios, in the sense that, do you feel that over the last several years that the hardware has gotten more complicated from your perspective, but way simpler from the artist's perspective? Like, do you work extra hard to make that hardware sort of just not be irrelevant, where it's just about like, I don't even have to think about it, it's doing what it's supposed to do, and I just work?
I think that over the last couple of years, I think that hardware and software has come leaps and bounds in terms of making it almost transparent to the end user.
Right.
For the most part. I mean, it really 10 years ago, it was a struggle. I mean, there wasn't very many vendors you could deal with, and you had to kind of deal with what they were sending you.
Right.
And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Right.
And so I think today, for the most part, the from everybody from Lenovo, they all have kind of a general baseline that they operate on. I don't think it's gotten more complex. I think it's gotten easier for me.
Oh, that's
I
nice.
think from just sheer workstation perspective. Now I think that you go beyond the workstation to enterprise networking and stuff like that. Yes, that has gotten more complex as the demands and the requirements. As computers get faster, you can push more frames through it, larger frames through it, larger data sets. It taxes things beyond the workstation. And so you have to gauge kind of like where that breaking point is so that you can keep everything up to date. So it's not just like you just upgrade workstations and go, oh, we're done.
Right.
It's like, okay, we got really fast workstations. Now software is able to really push the boundaries of what that workstation is able to do, which is bigger frames, bigger data sets. Storage, network speeds have to get upgraded. I mean, it requires almost a complete infrastructure change in some cases. So
Absolutely.
that part gets complex.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you and I have talked about like what we want our ideal workstations, and talked to Lenovo guys about what that is as well. And those workstations for us, it's about making things so fast
Yes.
that basically we don't have to wait for things or
Yes.
wait for a result to
Right.
come back. And the thing that you and I will always ask any hardware vendor is like, shove as many GPUs into that thing as you can, because we know that that's an easy way to iterate up to the speed of the process.
Right, and it scales linearly. I mean,
Right.
there's very few things in any technology that scale linearly like parallel processing does,
Right.
right? So, the more you throw in it, the faster it's going to be. I mean, that's just the nature, right?
Right.
Now, when I say fast, it's only certain things become faster. There's other things that it's not going to.
It's not gonna
right?
change, right.
But I think as year over year, I think we're going to see more and more and more parallelism, which is then I kind of mentioned it in my talk today. It's gonna start taxing other aspects. You're gonna bottleneck other places. I think Greyson and I were just talking about it. It's going to put a tax on storage. It's going to put a tax eventually on your memory bus. It's going to put a tax somewhere that you're going to go, oh,
Right.
too much is too much. But that's going to be a problem for these guys.
Yeah,
to
I
solve.
mean, and part of the response that we've had to have with all of these demands is to increase our capabilities to where it's truly not just hardware anymore. We also work on software to bridge that gap,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've been able to develop, a Lenovo Performance Tuner, where essentially now it's got set profiles that allow, it does not, I will say this, there is no excuse for not understanding your preferences
Right.
in your software.
Right.
But once you have that understanding, you can use, LPT, Lenovo Performance Tuner, as a tool to go in and with one click, fine tune it so that you're making sure that you're getting the most out of your hardware,
Right.
and it's getting optimized and connected to the software so that you just be an artist.
Right.
Yeah.
But honestly, these are things we can only discover and really understand if we've got a really strong collaboration with the actual users. And so that's where it's been really good, working with you guys, and you guys have worked with our development team
Right.
to say, these are the things you're going to need to look for. And so when we're all collectively making the products for the market,
Right.
it's a whole lot better.
Yeah.
And our development team actually very much embraces that versus just engineers basing it off of what technology emerges.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be a limit, obviously, to the physics. I mean, the physics is what it is, and so there's only so much you can maybe do
Yep.
with the physics of it. I mean, before you melt something, or before it's just you simply run out of space on a board, right?
Right.
And so we have to look at maybe creative ways to maybe work around those aspects. So
Well, we were doing, like, just as an idea, we were doing some weird stuff as I do at Chaos Group Labs, and we were trying something on cloud computing, and it was really, really fast, but there was a latency problem, obviously, with a certain thing we were doing, because it turns out that they were trying it in Bulgaria, and they were cloud computing to Los Angeles, and they're like, unless I can go faster than the speed of light, I can't change anything. about
even
this.
then, you also have the latency of these things bouncing from router to router to router, and it just takes one little
sure.
hiccup somewhere, and all of a sudden your latency is not going to
It's
be
adding up, yeah.
Yeah.
It's adding up. But I think, I don't want to get too technical because I know that
Yeah.
some of our listeners are like, and I can geek out all day.
Oh,
trust
yeah,
me
me
guys.
too.
That's a danger of this.
But I want to think about put yourself in the position of the artist right now, right? If you think about the artist and what is there, and thinking about my ideal computer or my ideal piece of hardware or what I need or what I'm thinking about, what do you think that is, Greyson? What do you think is the piece of hardware that you have heard from the artist is something that's going to make their lives easier?
I mean, I think the first place, and certainly, right, Eric will know more about this, but that understanding of where are you getting your performance from within the system. Is it the GPU? Is it the CPU?
So having
based
some
off of what you're
basic
doing?
knowledge of how the computer is operating.
Right.
Yeah,
Not
I
just
mean,
saying, it's a magic box.
It's a tool. I mean, for many of these artists, you say, hey, well, would you imagine just somebody handing you some paints and asking you to make a masterpiece?
Right.
Of course not. You would really want to intimately know your tools and what you're working with. And I think with technology, with that leap, it can be a little bit easy, especially when the box is, the system is all closed up.
Right.
I don't need to see everything
leave
that's
it
inside.
closed. Yeah, a lot of people just want to leave it closed.
Open it up.
Yeah.
Take a look. We make the system
Actually,
so you can do that and
no.
not make a problem.
It is actually one of my favorite things about the Lenovo box is how
Oh, that's
fast.
great.
Yeah, because we get a lot of GPU tests. We do a lot of stuff like that. So I can sit there and I can swap out a GPU in about 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Just boom, 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 and then it's so fast. So I can iterate really fast to do all these benchmarks and weird stuff. That is really cool, and it's cool to open it up. You're right, but it's like, I'll use another analogy. You wouldn't be a race car driver and not understand how an engine works.
Yeah.
That's exact. That
Part
was
of
one
the
yeah.
analogy I use, but I think it's tough because I'm not, is golf, right?
Okay.
A golfer would never walk into a sporting goods store, just get a set of clubs and play in the U.S. Open. They're going to get clubs that are tweaked, fine-tuned. Their swing is going to be analyzed, and that's really where we're trying to get to is
Right.
how can we analyze your workflow, how you work, how
Right.
you operate within your software to wrap around an entire solution that just fits you like a glove.
Right.
Right? So that's always the goal. We're getting closer and closer to it with the combination of the hardware and the design of it,
Right.
software tools that connect the applications to the hardware, and then just overall capabilities within the company. We have a customer solutions team that customers can work with and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. We can simulate that
Right.
and run through some of the challenges so that you can just keep working while we try coming up with why some things might be happening. So I think that's always the goal, is to get to a point where it feels like a glove to the artist, so that they can just be the best artist.
Yeah, and there's going to be growing pains a little bit because I brought this up in my talk this morning where
I heard it went really well, by the way. I heard your talk was amazing.
I thought it went good. I felt good about it.
Yeah,
but
it was really good.
I'm the one giving it, so I'm not the one that should be. I'm like patting myself on
That's
the back.
fine. I was just in the crowd, so I'll say it. It was awesome.
It was cool.
really good.
But what I basically do is like you'll ask somebody and you're just like, well, what software do you use? And they'll be like, Maya, right? And so some people will sit there and go, well, I'll just look at what the minimum requirements are, and just add to it.
Right.
But what you're not thinking about is that within a package like Maya or even like Photoshop, it depends on what you're doing with the software. It's very different if you're modeling versus running dynamic simulations. Your requirements are going to be drastically different.
Okay.
Very different.
Yep.
So it really, it's about how the user is using the tool. And when I say tool, it's the software. The hardware, then you customize to that specific need. Now, how many of us just use one piece of software? None of us, right? So it's not just one software that you have to actually kind of sculpt around. You have to sculpt around all the other supporting applications.
Right.
And so you might be running real-time app. You might be running, everything on, CPU-based, serial-based processing applications. You need a system that's going to be able to support all of them at once. If that's the type of user you are.
And also there's a system that you want that's flexible and upgradable.
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
So, I mean, that's something I certainly appreciate when I crack open Nova boxes is that I can swap out that GPU real easily or whatever. It's just much easier to manipulate.
Oh yeah. There's definitely I've had issues with other boxes just trying to get something in and out of it. When they're like, well, it's toolless, right? And you're like, it's toolless, but you've got massive you can't get fingers into places to pop tabs and stuff. You just can't do it without removing other pieces. So, there are little things that these guys think about that have made my life, like what I'm saying, that the systems have gotten easier.
Right.
It might be because of some of the things that they've actually implemented that now we're just like, well, this makes it simple.
Right.
But no, I think overall, it's about the user, and every user is going to use software different. They're going to use the hardware differently.
Right.
And they have to understand that a computer is not just a computer.
Right.
I mean, at its base level, yes. But the way that they're using it, it's the hammer. I brought up this brick, hammer, nail. You can hammer a nail with a brick if you want to.
Right.
And you might slam your thumb a few times, right? So you're going to move to a hammer, but you're not taking a sledgehammer to a finishing nail.
Right.
You could, but why? Right? So it really boils down to understanding what your workflow is, monitoring your resources, doing the extra work as a professional artist so that you can get the most out of that system for relatively the least money. So your ROI is actually higher.
Right.
It's the business aspect, and I think Greyson brought up a good point. Is this, the business end of it is important.
So yes, you basically, a lot of people are going into hardware, especially when they're picking PCs, and saying, where can I get my most performance per dollar, right? Or whatever that happens to be. However, there are people who don't care how much they pay because they want to make sure it's a pretty computer.
Yeah,
right.
There's that.
And that pretty computer mentality can happen from some people in the creative field, right?
Yeah.
Because they want something to look pretty. They don't just want it to be functional, right? They want it to be, I'd rather drive an Audi than a Toyota Corolla. They can both do the same thing.
Yes, they do. They get you from point A to point B. There are, there are reasons that people might go for pretty computer. I mean, they might be in a design office where everything has to be designy. It's part of the aesthetic. I get it. I understand that. But if performance is something that you need, you have to, you got to weigh it out. What's the most important thing to you? And so, it's software, hardware. It just has to work. It has to be in cohesion, 100% with what the artist needs are. And it's not. You can't just throw a rock and go, oh, that one will work, because you got to test. You got to understand what the test case is, and you're the only test case. I'm gonna
try to do real quick because we're kind of running a little bit low on time, but I want to talk about laptops.
Okay.
And here's why I want to talk about it. And I want to talk specifically in the context of an artist right here, or someone who's over at THU. Your laptop is a mobile computer, right? It goes with you. You do a lot of work on it. You can do a lot. It's generally speaking, I do most of my work on my laptop, right? Because I'm doing a lot of stuff on there, and I use the workstation when I got to do stuff.
Right.
Now, if I'm still a modeler in a company, I'm going to use the workstation almost exclusively. But I'm doing a lot of stuff on there, especially personal stuff.
Yeah.
Goes on this laptop. That laptop then becomes a representation of yourself, and that's where I'm coming in at the aesthetic look, right? So as you open up that laptop, you want to make sure that representation represents your work perfectly and looks great, right? Or if I'm going to a conference, I don't want to open a laptop that doesn't look great, you know? So I think it's really important. I think over the last several years, I think the ThinkPad line has definitely gotten better, and I love the Yogas.
Yeah.
The Yogas are really great. But what do you think are the trends that you're going to see in mobile laptops, and what that means and implies to the creative field?
Yeah, this over the last couple of years has taken a dramatic shift.
Yeah.
Because I can say even 4 or 5 years ago, most of the conversations we were having around true professional users in mobile said, look, I just need the power. I get that it's going to be bigger, thicker, heavier. I get it. That's what I'm going to get. A couple of years ago, the shift is on in a big way to where they say, wait a minute, I'm getting thin and light in everything else that I have, and mobile and easy to carry, and why can't I get that in my mobile workstation now?
Right.
Now, the good thing is it's working out. We're getting to the technologies and all that. Unfortunately, where I'm really excited about it is something that I can't talk about until next summer.
Yep.
In which case I may have even talked too much, but yeah, it's going that way, and we are very aware and actually excited and embracing that, because what that means is it's going to put that level of power in a lot more people's hands.
Yeah.
Right? So where maybe you're not the professional today, but you have the aspirations.
Yep.
You can now have that power in the system, the one system that you want to take everywhere that you want to go.
Yeah, right.
But it's been dramatic. I mean, it almost happened like overnight, where they said, yeah, the thin and light, really thin and light,
Right.
we want that with workstation power now.
Yeah, and I do think that obviously, like, it's not going to, there is no laptop on the planet that is a desktop replacement. Anybody that says this will replace your desktop.
I mean, how?
How?
Right?
Yeah.
The one that does all the stuff that I need weighs a ton, because it has to.
Yeah,
You can't shrink that.
No, there's no way. And well, it might be able to replace, say, like my mother's desktop computer, right?
Sure.
It might be able to do that. Laptops can do that. But it's not going to replace my workstations. It just simply won't. It's just they don't have the power. Secondly, it's when you start really ramping these things up and really pushing them, the battery can only last for so long, all right? And then the heat. So yes, you can get thin and light and you can do short bursts of work, but when you really have to sit down and you're working on these things all day, there isn't going to, I mean, unless magic happens where...
Well, what about external GPUs?
Yes, well, today there's
You still need CPUs.
Right, you still need CPUs. There's still other things. Even NVMe drives in it, they heat up. They get hot. So there's always going to be heat dissipation issues. External GPUs can solve a bit of it, but the thing is that they're going to speed up and ramp down. I mean, when they heat up, they're going to lower their power consumption and they're going to cool themselves down. So that's what you need them to do.
Right.
But yeah, external GPU stuff, and I think we were having this discussion as well. It's like getting more of that Thunderbolt accessibility on the North Bridge, so we can get it off of the I/O, that Southbridge I/O port or I/O controller. Get it off there because it's limited. That's a massive bottleneck, right? For storage in general, but especially when you start plugging in external graphics, it just doesn't work. It's just not going to work. So getting that moved over and ported over onto the North Bridge, that's going to be key. That's like a key element. But again, you have to have it plugged in. The thing's still going to be fired up, and So at that point, yes, the machine is portable, but are you going to be carrying around the GPU with you? Potentially, if they start to shrink
and that's
those.
part of what we've had to plan for, is we've had to expand portfolios and the level of performance across it all just because of that.
Right.
Are people going to be in a situation where they need two systems, right? And the complement, where a relatively low performing, lower performing, we're still talking workstations, so they're all going to work pretty well. But a relatively lower performing mobile, but still keep what they need for their rendering, those kinds of items. But the mobiles are also getting more powerful enough that, in sort of some of the 17-inch models and all that, maybe you can handle where you couldn't before your full end-to-end. And we have to plan for all of it because people are going to be in a different place across that entire spectrum.
Yeah, I think eventually, software is going to get to a point too where they're going to start almost treating everything like you might have all your software applications loaded on your laptop. So yeah, you can get on a plane, you can fly across the country or across the world, and yeah, you can do some light work and whatever. But when you actually get to a spot where you can sit down and you've got Wi-Fi connectivity, you're going to end up with a pseudo VDI type of situation where you're like, look, I'm just going to rent cores on the cloud somewhere and CPUs, GPUs, and basically spin up a machine that is just beastly somewhere else.
Yeah.
But the latency, then the distance between us.
I have thoughts about that, but unfortunately we're out of time. So really quick before we go, I want to make sure that we talk about where people can get more information. Obviously, just Lenovo.com to.
Lenovo.com. Also, we do have a microsite that goes in greater detail for configuration guidance and a tour of the products, just because sometimes that's needed. So that's ThinkWorkstations.com.
ThinkWorkstations.com. Awesome. And what about obviously Gnomon School?
Gnomon.edu.
Gnomon.edu.
We're a real school, so yeah, visit us
you
anytime.
You're just down the street from us, so
yeah.
All right, sounds great. All right, well, thanks so much, guys.
All right,
Thanks
bud.
for doing
Thank
this.
you.